Hello and welcome to the second episode of Build AI APIs with Treble. In this episode, we will be building a Go API with OpenAI.
Yeah, and last time we walked you through building an AI app in express.js. So this time we are flipping the tech stack and doing it in Go, right, Pratim?
Absolutely. So, a little bit about what I'll be showing today is we are building a simple AI app which takes in text and gives back a converted format of that text. And the app is known as LinkedIn and it's a fun app which changes your day-to-day mundane sentences or text into a way you could write it on LinkedIn.
Okay. So let's see how it works.
Absolutely. So we can register or log in. So auth is already built into the app, but let's go ahead and register from scratch. So I'm going to say, but don't follow my advice. Don't follow me here when I'm writing an email ID. This is a dummy email ID. And let's have a strong password. Okay, let's register. Cool.
Yeah.
So this is where I enter some text around it. Let's for example say that today I had an apple, and if I was overexcited about LinkedIn, how would I share this on LinkedIn? Today I had an apple. Let's see what our app has suggested. Yeah.
Wow.
So LinkedIn style text says that I should write, today I embarked on a fresh journey with a crisp, juicy apple. So if you want to use this, Rahul, feel free to write your next LinkedIn messages using this app.
That's super funny. And yeah, I'm sure that you're running Treble here to track every request and re response. So
Yes.
yeah. Can you also tell me more about the product structure and how you built this?
Yeah. So as we go ahead, I will definitely show the Treble platform and how every request that comes into the application can be observed, but via Treble. But before that, let's look at the basic architecture and flow
Yeah.
of this app.
Okay.
So, like our previous app, this app has the same features when it comes to building a layered architecture, JWT auth, API observability. And specifically for API observability, we are using Treble's newly rewritten Go SDK. And of course, the API follows all the RESTful best practices that we have already discussed in the last video. This starter kit comes with a set of features that you can just plug and play in your next Go app that you're building for an AI app. It has a layered architecture. It also has JWT authentication. And yes, observability is what the Treble Go SDK brings into picture. And of course, there is a Dockerized environment as well.
So you are also using these seven best practices that we use for the Express one to build REST APIs, right?
Yes. So I'm not going to spend time explaining the best practices for building a REST API. I think we covered that in our last video, so we
Yeah.
can move ahead from this now.
Yeah, and we can share like all the links for the previous video and the seven best practices for building REST API. You can find it all in the description. So yeah, we can move it now.
Right. I'd love to give a bit of understanding of how the project is structured. We have the front end part, we have the database section, and then we have the code logic. So if you can see,
Okay.
I have all my front end code is under the front end folder, and it is decoupled from my backend. So
Okay.
if anybody wants to have a quick understanding of how the logic flows, you can find everything under the internal folder.
Oh, okay.
The AI folder is where the logic for using OpenAI's Go SDK sits in. Then in the router is where we actually integrate Treble.
Okay. So
Yes.
coming from a different background, like JavaScript, I have no idea about Go. So as you mentioned that in router.go, we mentioned the middlewares. So the Treble
Yes.
middleware is at the router.go.
Yes. So
Okay.
basically, wherever the router logic sits for your API is where the treble middleware will be added. And now this is the part that is similar across any S treble SDK that we use. So even if it's Express, we again add it to our router, and even if it's Go, we add it to the same part. And
Okay.
another cool thing about adding the treble middleware is you just have to add it once to your router, and the SDK will then select and help you find your endpoints based on the route path. So there is
Yeah.
so Treble uses this logic of using your URL's route path to find the right endpoint instead of sending the whole URL to any application. Like that is what would mostly confuse you if you had a direct URL going on for every request to the application. Is that
Yeah.
clear? Does that make sense to
Yes.
you?
Yes, absolutely, Pratim.
Yes. A little bit more about the flow of the code, then we will then let's move to Treble. So in service is where the actual logic of how things work and how things connect is sits in. We also have a lot of test cases written, but the most of the flow is, as I mentioned, part of the handler, the service, and the AI folder. So if you want to understand about your auth, then you can go to the service folder and figure out how the login logic works, how the register logic works, and how the JWT is created. And yeah, this is all the basic things about this app. We have also implemented in-memory caching for this. Yeah, and we're using Postgres for the database, and that is something you can find in the migrations folder as well. I think we have covered most of the flow of the code. Am I missing out on something, Rahul?
No, Pratim, but I'm more excited to look at the live traffic that we just did. Let's jump into the Treble platform and see the request and endpoints of your
Right.
Go.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Let's jump to Treble.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I think we already went through the request flow in the last video, right?
yeah,
Okay. We covered how can we filter requests, how does we covered a lot of things in requests, and I'm sure that we stopped at understanding how we alerts, like
eh,
how we can set up alerts.
yeah.
We will get to this, but before that, let's take a look at endpoints, which is the natural
Okay.
progression on our dashboard after requests.
Yes.
So my application has three major endpoints, which was the post, register, and login. Like we saw that there was a registration flow and there was a login flow and the posts. So now I haven't set up these endpoints separately on Treble based on the router, based on my API routes. Treble automatically configured these endpoints for me.
By the way, I prefer the table view of my
Okay.
endpoints here. So
Okay.
yeah, it helps me to understand the groups and load time. So let's just jump into a particular endpoint and see the information that it provides.
Right. So let's see first. And a good practice to always do is what I do is to just refresh my account, because you never know if there is anything that's cached in the background. So what we
Yeah.
did just now was registering with a new email ID. And yeah, you can already see the body and the email password and the token here as well.
So you applied masking. Oh no, it's like Treble automatically applies masking to keywords like password and other stuff.
Yes. So for this example, like I haven't actually applied masking for password, but because in it's a default setup in Treble to mask sensitive keywords, and password is one of them. It is already masked for us. So this is really important for any customer centric data, and it just adds a layer of security to any code that you're using.
Okay.
Um, Another thing I would like to show you is now, if I want to share this app with you, I think you're very aware, like this is how we work on a
Yeah.
daily basis, is I love to just click on the share button And depending on if, because we both work in different time zones, I normally like to keep it for a day long, and then I can just copy the link and share the link with you.
Yeah. So that's how we share each other about the request. But in the endpoint, I like we can see the graph and different information. So can we talk about the average load time request and how this what this graph signifies?
Right, of course. So let's go to another request which has a better, a more beautiful graph, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to post requests, and let's see the graph for the last 72 hours.
Okay.
So here it's quite like, if you note, if you see, we the blue graph stands for the requests, the number of requests, and the green graph stands for the average load time. Now, based on the load that your API is going through, or based on the number of requests that are made at what particular time, you get a good match of request to average load time combination. So
Okay.
on the other, on the right, on the left hand side as well, you will be able to see how many requests have increased and in what time.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you notice here, we it says increase in the last 72 hours. Now, why does it say 72 hours? Because we have selected 72 hours as our time frame.
But Pratim, what does this average load time and this spikes that 100%? What does this mean?
So this 100% increase in your average load time shows that the performance of your API is degrading as the number of
Yeah.
requests that are coming into your endpoint are increasing. And if I were back in a team and if I was a lead, I would take this data back to my engineering team and bring this up as a concern. Is that clear?
Okay, so this average load time is for this particular endpoint groups, but we also have average load time for each request.
Yes, yes, that's correct. So for
Okay.
each request, you will also like, this is specifically a graph for average load time for the number of requests, but for any request also, you can see the load time. Like, you can specifically see
Yeah.
the load time for that request.
Okay. And in the last product webinar, we discussed about how to set up alerts. Now I know that when I'm on this platform, you can share it with me, the request through share
Right.
feature. But what about I don't want to come to the platform and I get all these alerts through my personal channels?
Okay. I'm going to answer this, but before that, I want to just share a few more things about this section of the endpoint dashboard. So
Okay.
here, if you're working in a company and you have a lot of endpoints and all of them have complicated names, and if you want anyone who's coming to your platform to easily discover your endpoint, you can also go ahead and update or change the name of your endpoint. For example, I named this endpoint, which is a posts endpoint, into, I gave it an alias name saying endpoint to convert text. And I wrote a description which is more understanding for anyone, which is the endpoint sends a string to the OpenAI API. So you could write this again as LinkedIn endpoint, and
Okay.
that's what it will then show you as.
Yeah. So it helps the other person to also understand about this endpoint.
Yes. And
Got it.
yeah, coming back to our your question around alerts. So the whole Trouble platform gives you different options to send alerts to your customers, to your colleagues, or anyone. For example, we just saw I could directly send you a request. The other
Yeah.
way is to go through the specific alert flow. Now, under my alerts, you have custom alerts where you will see the alerts that you have already created, and then you have another option which is saved searches.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
in saved searches, I have created this one, which is a LinkedIn post create. So what this saved search does, okay, let's see what it is saying. It says one alert uses this saved search. So I had already created this saved search, and then I've created a custom alert on top of this search, which lets me which gives me a alert every time someone has created a LinkedIn post for which we created the description some time ago. Is the flow clear to you now?
Okay, so that's how we create the alert. But can you also explain again that how you created the saved search and how it arrived it here?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you can do is you can just click on saved search, and inside that you have different options on which you could create your search. So let's take the most common one, which could be either a method that you do it on a post method, and you want to select desktop application. So you want to create an alert for any new request that's been made from a desktop and has a post method type.
Okay,
You can also select if you want what kind of threat levels you want. Now, threat levels is a topic we will dig deeper into another video, but majorly it just means how how safe or secure every request coming into your platform is. So, oh yeah, so you also need a name for this. So let's say post request created, and yeah,
yeah,
and then you can go to custom alert. You can go to the type of safe zone. Now, here you see we have a default type of alert that you can make on based on the spikes.
okay,
Spikes spikes are very closely related to the graphs that we saw, but we will cover that in the next video. But for now, let's choose saved search. From saved search, let's take post request created, and in channel we have Slack, email, and in-app options. So let's select Slack. And for Slack channel, here currently you do not have options, and we'll see why. So you also have the option of frequency. Now, how actively and how periodically do you want your alerts to be sent? You can let's select 30 minutes, or let's select 1 day. And let's select from this is I have to add people, but currently I'll just add myself. And okay, let's
you have to
add a
give the
name.
name. Yeah.
Yes. Notify when post created. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
So this is saying that the Slack channel ID field is required when in Slack notification is true. Ah, I think we won't create the Slack notification then, because first what we need to do is create add a Slack channel in Treble. But let's keep that for the next episode, I think.
yeah. By the way, my use case for saved search is when I go to request tab. Uh,
Okay.
so I use it as a filter. So I don't need to filter it again and again. So like
Right.
at the saved search, if you can click, not
Okay.
here.
Okay.
uh the saved search which I already
Okay.
created. Yeah, here I
Ah,
just click on it, so I it filters out every time, so I don't need to go to filter and create my filters again and again. So it helps me every time to filter out what I actually need to see. So for
okay.
example, I have different people in my team, so I tell some a particular person to only look for this type of errors or this type of responses. So that helps as a
Got it.
team. But I would really like to see the Slack, that how do we add the webhooks and how will it come to my Slack channel?
I think we can keep this for the next episode. But before we go to the next session, before we end for today's session, let's see one last thing is how we can add people. Now, I can add, so I already have these people in my saved cache because I've invited them to other projects. But if this is the first time I'm inviting someone, I can just add their name. And but I think I have already invited you. If you can see, yes. So I've
Yeah,
already invited you, so I won't be able to invite you again. But if I were to invite someone else, veteran@treble.com, and then just have to hit send invite.
yeah.
And yeah, that's it. And this should cover our flow for today then.
Yeah, I think what stood out to me is within this project is how quickly we get this full observability without changing much of the code. We just need to add the middleware, and then everything is visible, like request, response, errors, and performance. And that saves a lot of time when building and testing. So that was really helpful for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of my favorite things about just integrating with Treble as well. That no matter what language or framework you're using, the way you use the Treble SDK stays the same, and the amount of steps needed are also the same. So it's not completely different. So to a point, it is language and framework agnostic, and that is something that's really helpful to get started quickly, no matter what background you come from.
Absolutely.
And with this, we are done with the second episode of this series. Thank you so much, Rahul, for being on this episode with me. And I hope you learned something about the Go infrastructure. And I keep learning from you about the Treble platform every day as well.
Yeah, and everyone who is watching, if you want to check out the full code base, links down in the description. Feel free to clone it, run it locally, and see how everything fits together. And you can also find links for best practices for building REST APIs, the previous starter kits. So yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. See you again in another video with a new framework, but the same Treble platform to make sure observability stays the same. And definitely with the new AI API. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to give us in the comment section and we will pick up that API for you. Until then, keep coding and have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye, everyone.